I don't know why it kept happening, but for weeks, I kept waking up in the middle of the night, always at 3 a.m. No alarm, no noise, just silence. The kind of deep, still silence that makes the air feel thick. And yet, my eyes would fly open, and I'd feel wide awake, as if something had gently tapped me on the shoulder. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was stress. Maybe I was just getting older. I started cutting back on caffeine, changed my bedtime routine, even tried sleep apps. Nothing worked. I still woke up at that exact hour, every single night. What made it weirder was how calm I felt. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't afraid. It was like I was meant to be awake. I began to wonder, what if this isn't random? What if someone or something is trying to reach me? So one night, I stopped fighting it. I didn't roll over or force myself back to sleep. Instead, I whispered into the dark, if someone's trying to speak to me, I'm listening. At first, I tried to explain it away. I told myself I was probably stressed too many late nights, too much caffeine, too much thinking. I thought maybe I was just anxious about life, work, bills, the never-ending list of things I needed to get done. So I made some changes. I stopped drinking coffee after noon. I turned off screens an hour before bed. I downloaded calming music playlists and even bought one of those fancy sleep masks with lavender in it. Still, 3 a.m., wide awake, every night. I even gave in and tried melatonin, then stronger stuff. Nothing worked, and that's when I started feeling off. Not just tired, but like something was happening that didn't make sense. It wasn't just the timing, it was how I felt in those moments. My body was tired, but my mind was alert, almost too alert, like I was meant to be awake. I started to wonder, what if this wasn't insomnia? What if this wasn't stress? What if something was calling me? That thought scared me a little, but it also stirred something deep inside, something I hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet curiosity, a spiritual pull. I didn't tell anyone. I mean, how do you even explain that to people? Hey, I keep waking up at 3 a.m., and it kind of feels like God's trying to get my attention. It sounds crazy, right? But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling. There was something about those nights, that silence, that stillness, that strange, soft clarity in the air, like the world was holding its breath. It felt sacred, unexplainable, like a space between two worlds. And that's when I asked myself the question that changed everything. What if I stopped trying to fix it and just listened instead? Then one night, I stopped fighting it. I didn't toss and turn. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't try to force myself back to sleep. I just lay there, still, quiet, listening. The air felt different somehow, heavier, but also more alive. There was a presence in the room, not loud, not visible, but something I couldn't ignore. I closed my eyes and whispered into the dark, God, if you're calling me, I'm listening. It was the first time I stopped treating it like a problem to fix, and the moment I surrendered, something shifted. I felt this strange peace settle over me, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was supposed to do. Be still and listen. That night, I didn't get any visions. I didn't hear a booming voice from heaven, but I felt something. A knowing, a kind of soul-level awareness that said, this isn't random. This is sacred. This is the fourth watch. Later, I found out that 3 o'clock to 6 a.m. is often called the fourth watch, a time in the Bible when God visited people in powerful ways. Jesus walked on water at this hour. Jacob wrestled with God at daybreak and received his blessing. And here I was, wide awake, at the same hour. It gave me chills. What if this wasn't just a sleep pattern? What if I was being invited into something deeper, into communion, into assignment, into spiritual awakening. For the first time, I realized, I'm not just awake, I've been awakened. A few days after that night, I couldn't shake the feeling. I kept waking up same time, same stillness, same weight in the air. Something was different, and I knew it. So, out of curiosity, I started digging. I typed "waking up at 3 a.m. into the search bar, expecting to see medical articles or sleep advice. But what I found stopped me cold. The fourth watch. It's a biblical term I had never paid attention to before. But as I read more, something clicked. The fourth watch refers to the time between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. In ancient times, nights were divided into 4 watches, and the last one, this one, was considered the hour of divine encounters. This was the hour when Jacob wrestled with God and refused to let go until he was blessed. This was the hour when Jesus walked on water to meet his disciples in the middle of the storm. Suddenly, everything made sense. I wasn't just waking up, I was being awakened. I realized this wasn't random, and it wasn't a sleep issue. It was an invitation, an assignment. I was being called not to panic, not to scroll on my phone, but to be still and meet God. I sat with that realization for a long time. And the more I read about the fourth watch, the more it resonated. God often speaks in the quiet. He reveals things when the world is asleep, when your soul is still enough to listen. All this time, I thought something was wrong with me, but the truth, something sacred was being made right. The moment I stopped resisting and started responding, something inside me shifted. Instead of grabbing my phone or trying to fall back asleep, I began to sit in the silence. I prayed, not with fancy words, just honest ones. I talked to God like I would to a close friend. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes I just sat there, breathing and listening. I started keeping a journal next to my bed. Every time I had a dream, I'd write it down as soon as I woke up. Some dreams were strange, others were vivid, full of symbols and moments that felt more like messages than memories. Then the images started showing up even when I was awake. One night, I saw a picture so clearly in my mind it wasn't imagination. It felt like insight, like instruction, like revelation. Ideas for work would come to me out of nowhere, solutions I had been struggling with for weeks. I started getting nudges in my spirit about people I needed to check on. Suddenly, prayer wasn't a ritual anymore. It was a lifeline. My relationships began to shift. I handled stress differently. I spoke more gently. I listened more. What used to feel like a spiritual inconvenience, waking up at 3 a.m., became something I started to look forward to. I wasn't afraid anymore. In fact, I couldn't wait. There was this quiet excitement, like I was being invited to something holy, and all I had to do was say yes. As the nights passed and I kept showing up in the silence, something shifted again. I started to realize this wasn't just about me. Sure, I was being called, but not just to receive, but to stand in the gap. Some nights I would feel this sudden urgency in my spirit. A name would pop into my mind. A friend I hadn't spoken to in months. A family member going through a hard time. I didn't always know what was going on in their lives, but I would start to pray for them, deep, focused prayers that felt given, not just spoken. It was like I was being handed an assignment from heaven, and when I prayed during those early hours, it felt different, stronger, clearer, like the words weren't just echoing into the dark, but slicing through it, like a sword of light. That's when I came across a verse in Ezekiel 33:6. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet to warn the people, I will hold the watchmen accountable for their blood. That hit me hard, because I realized that's who I had become, a watchman, not just for myself, but for the people I love, for my community, maybe even for strangers I'll never meet. I wasn't just waking up, I was waking up to responsibility. The more I leaned into those early hours, the more I began to notice subtle shifts within me. Not just emotionally or mentally, but spiritually. I started learning how to listen in the silence, not just with my ears, but with my spirit. There's a kind of quiet that only exists at 3 a.m., the world still, the noise gone, and your soul finally loud enough to be heard. It was in those quiet hours that I began to sense God speaking. Not audibly, but gently through impressions, through peace, through nudges I couldn't ignore. One of the most important lessons I learned was the difference between an ordinary dream and a divine one. Some dreams faded the moment I opened my eyes, but others clung to me like they had something to say. These dreams were layered, symbolic, they carried weight, and when I wrote them down, patterns began to form, themes, instructions, warnings, promises. I realized that the small things matter, that quick thought I had before falling asleep, that feeling in my chest when I prayed, that one sentence in a dream I couldn't forget. They weren't random. They were threads in a tapestry I couldn't see yet, but would one day understand. So I started journaling everything, even the little things. And you know what? Those little things started becoming the keys to much bigger doors. This journey hasn't been loud or dramatic. It's been quiet, sacred, full of whispers and clues. But in the stillness, I've discovered the loudest truths of my life. If you've been waking up at 3 a.m., night after night, and you can't quite explain why, maybe it's not just a sleep problem. Maybe it's not just your body. Maybe it's your soul trying to get your attention. You're not broken, you're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. There's something sacred about that hour, a stillness that speaks louder than noise. It's where heaven meets earth, quietly. And if you've felt it too, if you've been stirred awake by something you can't see, can't name, but deeply feel, then maybe, just maybe, you're one of the chosen. So the next time it happens, don't panic, don't rush to fix it, just breathe, be still, and listen, because that whisper in the dark, it might just be the beginning of something sacred. So if you're listening right now wide awake, maybe wondering why you're even watching this video at this hour, let me tell you this, you're not here by accident. You didn't stumble on this message by mistake. There's something greater at work, something holy, and tonight, I want to pray with you. You don't have to close your eyes. You don't even have to say it out loud. Just let these words settle into your soul. God, thank you for the one watching this right now. Thank you for waking them not just from sleep, but from everything that's been weighing on them. Speak to them in the silence. Whisper truth in the places they've doubted. Let them feel your nearness in the darkness. If you're calling them, make it clear. If you've chosen them for something greater, show them the next step. Give them courage to say yes. Give them peace that doesn't make sense. Let their 3 a.m. moments become sacred encounters with you. Tonight, we don't fight the silence. We welcome it, because you speak there, and we are listening. Amen. And if that prayer touched you, if your heart feels a little different now, then maybe tonight isn't just another night. Maybe it's the start of something new. Don't go back to sleep on your calling.